Hello, good morning, and welcome to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. As I prepared for today's edition of Newsfile, I decided to go back into my archives and to see how many times I have moderated a discussion on this program about killings in Baku. Killings in the dozens in Baku. The curfew that's never ending. I got tired counting. Today we are told that as many as 19 people have been killed, shot and killed. Families, friends turned enemies. In February last year, there was the enskinment of a rival chief that led to bloodbath. The government issued an arrest warrant on that chief. He was never arrested because the state said he had gone into hiding. That chief has managed to get the court to set aside the warrant of arrest against him. So, this week, he returned to Baku. He returned home. That's the result. 19 more people killed. Residents tell me the death toll is far more. So, what will end this conflict? Stay tuned. The Supreme Court, at least the Chief Justice, has been under the impression that its decision will get Parliament to sit. It appears obvious. She got it wrong. The decision of the Supreme Court does not lead to Parliament reconvening. Did the court uphold the Constitution and the laws of Ghana in its 31st October ruling on the 4 vacant seats declared by the Speaker? Join us. We'll right back to deal with the vexed matters. Welcome. Samson's take. Corruption. Why 82% suffer economic hardships. I wrote my take last week, sitting in the first anniversary lecture of my friend Akoto Ampal. The deep thinker, Professor Kwesi Prempeh, delivered the paper on the theme, The Problems of Democracy in the Fourth Republic. He was as thought-provoking as the discussants, including Professor Georgie Chikata and Suleiman Abrahima, who joined him on the topic, The Crisis of Citizenship in Contemporary Ghanaian Democracy, Lessons from the Life and Times of the late Anthony Akoto Ampal. I wrote today's take, listening to Professor Stephen Adai and others at the 25th anniversary event of the Ghana Integrity Initiative, GII. That's the local chapter of global watchdog, Transparency International. I was inspired to conclude that 3 things hold back the progress of this beautiful country and endanger its peace. 1, extreme partisanship of the NDC-NPP duopoly that divides even tribes and families. 2, corruption, especially grand corruption that enriches the few and impoverishes the majority in a country rich in gold, cocoa, and oil. And 3, the indiscipline that allows reckless and unlicensed driving and the galamsey to thrive in the face of laws against it. In 2023, just last year, 87% of citizens were of the view that Ghana was badly managed. Today, by the latest Afrobarometer survey, 82% believe the country is headed in the wrong direction. The report highlights current economic hardships, with 82% of respondents saying they have experienced some level of poverty over the past year, a stark increase from just 19% in 2017. Mark that. 7 out of 10 Ghanaians have gone without cash income at least once in the past year, while many face shortages in essential services like medical, water, access to water, food, and cooking fuel. 74% believe the corruption situation has gotten worse. They have seen millions of dollars in people's bedrooms, and those people are not subject for prosecution. The defense of the president, Professor Adair, insists widespread corruption in high public office is no longer a matter of perception, but reality. He invites us to look at the cost of primary elections alone when the parties are doing their internal elections. Remember, just 2022, CDD did a survey that showed that you need as much as whopping 100 million US dollars to prosecute a successful presidential campaign. Where do they get that money from? MPs need in excess of 4 million Ghana cedis. Professor Adair thinks this amount would have doubled by now. They don't get that money from space. They get it from right here, from your taxes. They steal it. He indicts those involved for damaging or demanding bribes. He is sad worried that the institutions set up to fight corruption are themselves very corrupt. Yeah, the survey shows the lack of trust. The executive, parliament, and the judiciary. For Professor Adair, corruption is not receding because leaders don't mean it when they say they are committed to fighting it. From zero tolerance, to corruption is mass murder and must be punished as such. He believes we may now be dealing with double or more the $3 billion figure on record as the amount that is unaccounted for each year in this country. $3 billion. We went to the IMF for how much? He joins the Ghana Integrity Initiative and Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition's years of campaign to adopt the civil law reverse burden of proof for corruption. The need, including for rules as advanced by Chiy Commissioner Dr. Joseph Withal, so that all that is required is for people accused of acquiring wealth beyond their means to be the ones to prove that they got the wealth by legitimate means, not the one making the accusation proving it. Next week, I hope to elaborate on the long-standing proposed approach to implementing the unexplained wealth provisions in Chapter 24 of the 1992 Constitution and why the current Conduct of Public Officers Bill must not pass if assets declared will not be subject to verification and publication, and if prosecution for offenses under it will not be by the OSP but the often complicit Attorney General's Department. What a sham we are up to. And that is my take. We'll be right back.
Stand Thursday morning by the king of the Mampugu traditional area of which Baku is said to be part, now Bawku Abdullahi Mohammed Sherga, together with his royal court members. It started with the arrival of the families and sympathizers of the 4 Mamprugu Gate in Baku. Soon, scores of people in around Nalirgu began to gather at the palace to witness the historic enscalment of a Baku Naba by a Mamprugu overlord after nearly 40 years. However, while the processes were ongoing, members of the Northeast Regional Security Council, led by the Regional Minister Yidana Zakari, arrived at the palace in the company of heavily armed security forces. The presence of the regional minister briefly halted the process as the crowd erupted in opposition against his presence and demanded that he leave the place. After a brief opposition from the crowd, Mr. Yidana, following the intervention of the palace elders, was allowed to engage the overlord in a short private conversation. Whilst on his way out after the meeting with the overlord, the crowd began to hoot at him and his delegation. A palace elder later told Joy News that the minister had come to accompany the overlord to Accra upon the invitation of President Nana Akufo-Addo. The elder added that the overlord turned down the invitation and told the minister it was too late to stop the enscalment. The enscalment processes then resumed and soon ended with the announcement of Na Seidu Abagari with a chieftaincy titled Na Akuluga II as the new chief of the Bawku Paramount Skin. Speaking to Joy News, some of the residents believe this enscalment will ensure the return of peace in Baku.
The ban has never solved any problem. Bans have killed many people. We have seen many deaths. We have seen many maiming. We have seen many properties and lives destroyed. It has to stop. The youth, I am a young man and I feel very bad. Every time I see pictures of precisely youth being killed, as somebody who is a parent, I feel very much aggrieved. I am not happy.
There is nothing like a Supreme Court ruling. So indeed, what the Nigeria has done today is the best thing to do. Indeed, this is a stepping stone to a resolution of the conflict or crisis in Baku. I would want to entreat politicians to respect the chieftaincy institution. So the government should rather pay attention or concentrate on how to ensure that lives and property are not lost there. But as for taking the chief home, in fact, the chief will soon be home. There is nobody on earth that will be able to stop the legitimate Baku Naba from getting to Baku.
I expect everything to return to normal as usual. We've had it before during the era of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana's first president. He created this thing in the first place. But after the overthrow of Nkrumah in 1966, the 30th king of Baku, na Bongo Adam Badimso, and skin na Tampura Adam Zanjo as the 14th Baku Naba. And you can go and check the history. Baku returned to normalcy. Everything was moving on smoothly until the demise of the 14th Baku Naba, na Tampura Adam Zanjo, before we had what we were having. So we are optimistic that everything will return to normalcy after this escapement.
So everybody in Mamprugu, Upper East, in Northeast, we are happy to see such a thing. For Nayiri to skin Baku Naba, because all that place is for Yawa.
The new chief is a popular retired educationist whose grandfather was the 12th Baku Naba. He was unanimously approved by the crowd as they burst into loud cheers amidst drumming and dancing. The new chief, Na Akuluga II, called for an end to all hostilities in Baku.
Finally, Baku program that has existed for almost half a century.
Elias Sutanko reporting from Nalirgu for Joy News.
The government must back.
So this was in February of 2023 when Na Alhaji Seidu Abagari was enskinned by the Nayiri as Baku Naba to rival the Baku Naba in place under the skin name Na Kulga II. This enskinment appears to have happened at a time that the security could not pick the intelligence properly. So whilst the process was going on, the president sent for the chief to be brought to Accra, and they told the president it was too late to reverse anything. So it went on. Right after, the bloodbath ensued. Then sometime even before that, the members of parliament in the area, particularly those who belong to the Kusase faction, there's a Mampurushi faction or the Mampurugu faction and the Kusase faction, led by Kletus Avoka, gave a press conference and asked the president or the government to do the right thing. At the time, the president or the government had issued an arrest warrant for the newly enskinned. And we are told he went into hiding. This is what the MP said at a press conference. Let's hear them.
The problem we have with the Baku issue is that people don't want to accept the truth.
Was done Thursday morning by the king of the Mampurugu,
Timpani, and Garu, who include Honorables Mahma Ayaraga, Kletus Avoka, Abanga Abdullahi, Haji Lardy Ayi Ayamba, Lydia Lamisa Kamvareba, and Honorable Albert Akoko Alazuga, that the Nairi, Na Bohugu Mahami, Abdullah Sherga II has purported to enskin a rival chief for Baku. This is unacceptable and should not come from a person of his stature. Such purported enskinment is null and void and will not be recognized by any institution under the 1992 Constitution. The government of Ghana must take every step to ensure the maintenance of peace and security and hold perpetrators of this criminal act accountable. Meanwhile, the members of parliament for the area call on the people of the Kusauk traditional area and its environs to remain calm and assure them that this unlawful conduct will not stand. It is not enough to condemn the act. It should go further than that and make sure that the fellow doesn't act as a chief. That is important. Not words alone, but action by government. There cannot be a rival chief in Baku. There is one chief recognized by law, and that should be respected by everybody under this constitutional dispensation. So government should not just say that we condemn it, but make sure it doesn't work. No rival chief exists in Baku. That cannot be tolerated. I'm very much surprised that this incident could not be nipped in the bud, that it could have been prevented.
Right. Now, as I said, the government then issued an arrest warrant for Na Alhaji Seidu Abagri, for the paramount chief of the Mampurugu traditional area and his kingmakers. But that arrest warrant was later revised. It was revised on the 21st of February. It had been issued on the 2nd, was it? Then it was revised on the 21st, removing the paramount chief and his kingmakers and leaving only Alhaji, Na Alhaji Seidu Abagri, as the one who was wanted for committing certain crimes which were a threat to national security. And I'm quoting what they said. What the chief did was to go to the High Court to seek to set aside this arrest warrant. At the time, he was said to have run into hiding. They were unsuccessful at setting aside the arrest warrant. Then they took the matter to the Court of Appeal. And the Court of Appeal in Tamale on the 17th of October reversed the arrest warrant. And Na Alhaji Seidu Abagri returned to his home in Baku. This is where we are. That has led to the new developments. Remember, in November, soldiers were accused of killing in excess of 10 of the citizens because these shootings were going on. And Mahama Yarga actually petitioned Shraj. We don't know what became of it. In the latest development, let's hear Asamoah Boateng, who is the Minister for Chieftaincy.
In terms of how the rival chief ended up in Baku, I'll leave that to security agencies to answer that. It's unfortunate he did. Something that we have to find answers to, and also to try and deal with it, because his very presence is creating the problems. And indeed, as you read from the statement yesterday, it's causing a lot of unrest and unease and tension. So let's, as I said, leave that to security agencies. Released a press statement that declared a curfew in the Baku area due to the substantial threat to public safety and security. Government is guided by its responsibility to protect lives and property, and above all, to enforce law and order to restore normalcy as quickly as possible.
So, what happened? Let me begin from the studio briefly. We will go on the Zoom to speak to Dauda Jawara Salifu, spokesperson for the Mamprusis in the Baku, and he's also a member of the Nairi legal team. He's a lawyer. Maxwell Zinyele Agbambila is lawyer for the Baku Naba. But let me begin with Dr. Victor Doke, who is lecturer, Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. Very briefly, I'm picking out something from these developments, that in February 2023, when this enskinment happened, the government appeared to have intervened too late. When the enskinment was going on, that is when the government sought to have it stopped by inviting the chief to Accra, and they simply ignored them because it just was not going to happen. Then after that, an arrest warrant was issued for him, and it was said that he had gone into hiding. So that arrest warrant, as we know now, has been thrown away by the Court of Appeal. And that happened on the 17th of October. Why do you think there may have been some intelligence failure? Because from that date, the groups began to issue press statements indicating that he was returning to his palace.
All right, thank you very much, and good morning. Good morning to my colleague here. So with regards to the narrative you've given, yes, I agree strongly that there was some sort of lapses with regards to intelligence, because then the conflict, decades-old conflict, which every stakeholder is aware of and knows of. Now, when you talk about the security services, right, even if it's not the current crop of, security couples or heads on this case, there is some sort of like notes that people come in and have read. So you would expect that there would have been a comprehensive intelligence strategy with regards to, one, monitoring events in Narelegu. Two, even after the failure to stop the process, what happened? You monitor the said Alhaji Seidu, his movements. Now that didn't happen. So when that didn't happen, then the information would be that he's gone into hiding, right? So that brings to a fundamental question: are we really on top of our intelligence apparatus? Now that aside, you have the press conferences, as you rightly stated. How about monitoring those press conferences, picking up the sources, picking up individuals, and then interrogating them to know where Seidu is? We didn't do that. And I remember 15 February 2023, when the process started, I had the opportunity to speak on this platform, and then I mentioned that Seidu should not be allowed to enter Baku, otherwise there'll be consequences. Now the unfortunate has happened, he entered, and then we saw the aftermath, 3 days of cacophonous shootings and disruptions in Baku, thereabout. We have, a number of security services manning areas. How is it that Seidu came into Baku unnoticed? There are a lot of questions that needs to be answered.
I'm not sure we can say he went to Baku unnoticed. On the same 17th of October, the Mampurugu Youth Association, Maya, they issued a press statement. Arrest warrant on Na Sherega Alhaji Seidu Bagri set aside by appeals court. So they stated a number of things, went back to what had happened earlier. They called what had happened about the Rambo style, which with the military stormed Nalerigo to effect the illegal warrant. And then they commended their people and kingmakers for being patient and following the legal processes to overturn the arrest warrant. And then concludes by saying, we take this opportunity to call on the government and security agencies to respect the decision of the appeals court and refrain from any further interference in this matter. Any continued attempt to meddle will only exacerbate tensions and undermine the integrity of our democratic and legal institutions. They urge all to accept the ruling peacefully. We encourage any aggrieved party to seek legal redress through appropriate channels, just as we have done. Violence or any other form of disruption will only worsen the situation, and so on and so forth. And the indication was clear that he was returning to Baku.
Immediately, this press came out. What should our intelligence and security agencies, what should they have done? You monitor the situation, if need be. You can project, obviously. This, I call it, it's an easy analysis to make that. When you have a chief already in an area, and then you have a rival chief who is coming into an area, you are definitely going to have armed confrontations. So it's either we saw the signs on the wall and didn't act, or there are some shadow stakeholders benefiting in all these skills. Come again?
Complicity.
Complicity. We're complicit.
We're going for elections, some suggest.
Exactly. Now, we'll come to the political side, which plays between the two sides of the
19 lives at stake, and some tell us there's even more.
There's even more, so I heard from my interaction with some friends that I have in Baku. There's even more to it than the 19 lives.
Is it not a very difficult situation for the government? They issue an arrest warrant for this chief, and then he manages in the period of the year to get it set aside. It's a court of competent jurisdiction, the Court of Appeal, that set it aside and said the reason they set it aside was that the warrant was issued wrongly. The law requires that the arrest warrant must be issued by a magistrate of a district court. But this was issued and signed by a commissioner for oath and dealt with at the High Court. And the Court of Appeal was very plain that the processes were completely wrong. So the arrest warrant was a nullity. So it's on technical grounds. That's why they set it aside.
Yeah, right. Now, going into, I'm not a lawyer, but from your explanation, then how about we do the right thing for the sake of peace? Okay? Now, for the sake of peace, well-meaning Ghanaians and we analysts, researchers would agree that Alhaji Seidu needs to come out of Baku, first of all. So then we can now move forward and then talk about resolving the other.
So when the Court of Appeal set the arrest warrant aside, the government should have now done it properly.
My take.
And then rearrested, sought to rearrest him.
Sought to rearrest him. Now, if the arrest is going to create a problem,
it definitely will create a problem. You know that.
Exactly.
We are in election time. And the community or the town, the place, the region, sort of, is divided into two. There is the MPP and there's the NDC.
Exactly.
And one group is perceived to be MPP, and that group is shocked that their government is doing this to them.
Exactly. So now that's why I talk about the political aspect. Now, knowing very well it's an election year and you wouldn't want to lose elections, so you play it safe. Safe by that I mean, issuing another arrest warrant would mean that your people will not vote for you. You can't risk that. You understand? Now, when the Bawku Naba places an embargo on the activities, affecting the NPP side, that also causes or has a cause for concern with regards to who wins and who loses in that aspect. But in all, if you were the government, you would be very careful with regards to, touching Seidu or even issuing an arrest warrant. But what are we actually hoping to achieve? Peace in Bawku. So for the right thing to be done, let's get him out of the area, first of all, for calm to be restored. And now we can proceed on where we stopped at.
Well, they insist that that is his home. You can't, what are you trying to do? That's his home. He was born, bred there, his fathers, forefathers lived there. And in any case, they insist that he has every right to ascend to that throne, that skin. So you hold it there, I'll return, and I can see Kofi Bentil. Kofi Bentil is here. Kofi Bentil, Dr. Tony Edu, and a couple others will be helping us to look at the Supreme Court's decision. But of course, they will have a quick bite on this issue. And you can imagine that he's itching to go rebel blunt on what he thinks the failures are that has led to this loss of lives. Yes, let's now talk to Dauda Jawara Salifu, who is spokesperson for the Mamprusi in Baku and member of the Nayiri legal team, as well as Maxwell Abambila, who is lawyer for the Bawku Naba. Dauda, thank you very much for joining us, sir.
You are most welcome, Samson, and good morning to all your viewers.
Right. There are those who suggest that since you knew that potentially there will arise this kind of situation, even when you were victorious at the Court of Appeal, and some also suggest that the Court of Appeal may have needed to pay attention to the situation there and not, just go ahead and issue that this thing is unlawful. Some say since you knew that this was potentially going to happen, even in your victory, don't take Na Alhaji Seidu Abagri into Baku. What do you say?
Well, very well, Samson, sorry. You see, the question of illegality was decided by the Court of Appeal. And so, Na Seidu Abagri Na Kolga patiently waited for over a year, to get a favorable outcome of this matter, so that he could move on. But don't forget that Na Seidu Abagri was enslaved by the Nayiri, who is the kingmaker of Baku. So he was just a beneficiary. There were others. It could have been any other Mamprusi prince. You see? And if you look at the period between when the Court of Appeal's decision came out and the time that he went back to Baku, it took a while. And please don't forget that he's a father, he's a grandfather, he's a head of a family, he's a head of a clan, and his spiritual and wise guidance is needed by his people. So you cannot exile somebody, a Ghanaian, and ask that, don't come back to your hometown, because if you come back to your hometown, there will be some upheavals and then we would shed blood. I mean, that basically is the statements, unfortunately, by our Kusasi brothers. I thought that they would have exercised restraint and allowed, you know, the due process, the legal processes to go on. Because you see, I had also cited an appeal to the Supreme Court seeking to overturn the decision of the Court of Appeal. I thought that was unfortunate, but the government thought it wise that, look, going to the Supreme Court, you know, to pursue this matter was not the best. So it rescinded that decision. And I was thinking
you mean to say that after the decision of the Court of Appeal on the 17th, when the Attorney General lost, they went to the Supreme Court and they also decided to withdraw that appeal to the Supreme Court?
Yes, I cited it. I cited something like that. There was a process, a notice of appeal, you know. So, and that was an unfortunate situation. But you see, I thought that na Sedu Abagre na Kolga, you know, going back to Baku shouldn't have created all these mayhem and upheavals.
His enskinment brought trouble, brought death. So you know that his return will also likely result in what we are now seeing, right?
Samson, we can go back to that, but you see, a lot of people say that his enskinment was illegal. What was the illegality in the enskinment? You see, when you go to the Constitution, you know, Article 277, it clearly states how somebody becomes a chief. Nobody has said that Nakoga does not hail from Baku. He doesn't hail from a royal lineage. And that his enskinment was not done according to the customs and traditions of Mampusi. So when people say that there was an illegality and that the enskinment was wrong, is it to say that it did not comply with the provisions of Article 277 or any other provisions under the Chieftaincy Act? Now, Samson, you and I are lawyers. Look at section, I think, 63 of the Chieftaincy Act. There are subsections from A to F, which talks about offenses of a chief. Where in all those subsections apply to Nasheriga? You can't find any.
Don't you think that sometimes for the sake of peace, you don't unduly stay on the black letter law and say, if you can't point to breaching of Article 277, if you can't point to offenses committed by a chief, then you know we are clean. No one should complain, yet deaths are happening.
So I'm happy you have said that. So those offenses you can't find any offense under the Constitution or under the Chieftaincy Act. But Samson, let me refer you to, still on the Constitution, Article 1911. Okay, and if I may read, it says that no person shall be convicted of a criminal offense unless the offense is defined and the penalty for it is described in a written law. So, the crime. Who has defined that crime that Naseriga has committed? Where is the crime?
Okay, hold on for me.
And Samson, don't forget that Naseriga did not enskin himself.
That's a point you have made. So hold on for me. Let me bring on Maxwell Agbambila, who is lawyer and speaks for the Bawku Naba. Thanks for joining us, Maxwell. So the question some are asking is, why should now Kulga the second's return to his home, to his family, to his people, results in bloodbath?
Thank you, and thank you to all your viewers and listeners. Before I go to answer your question, if you may permit me to make a comment or two about what has already been discussed so that we can properly put the conversation into proper perspectives, in my humble view. Now, the first question you asked to the first speaker was whether or not there was some security lapse. And he sort of agreed with you and sought to say that indeed there has been some security lapse. Now, with respect, I completely disagree that national security or the security architecture of this country has never been fully aware of all the events that are happening in Baku. I think, and I can give you a litany and series of events to buttress my point. I think that what is happening in Baku is purely as a result of the fact that the Mampusis in Baku think that because they have a son in the person of the Vice President of the Republic, they can use him to perpetrate the carnage that is now happening in Baku. And permit me to give you just a few things. Now, you would know that the Mampusis in Baku purport that they had a chief who died more than 40 years ago. They never spoke about any funeral. Indeed, the information we have is that the man died as a practicing Muslim. And then you know that when Muslims die, there's an adua that is being performed. 40 years later, all of a sudden, they get up and say, look, we want to perform a funeral of our departed chief. Everybody cautioned them that this funeral that you want to perform is a recipe for disaster. In fact, national security picked the intelligence. They placed an injunction on the so-called funeral. But surprisingly, there were people led by a certain Natampuri. They stormed Baku and violated the injunction that was placed on the purported funeral and actually performed it. They got them arrested, I think about 7 of them, brought them to Accra, took them to court, gave them VIP treatment. They were acquitted and they returned home as heroes. National security saw, they knew about it. Then later, we heard that there was some purported enslavement in Baku. The government issued an arrest warrant for the arrest of Seydou Abagri. Look, in this country, let's not kid ourselves. Unless government or the security apparatus don't want to find you, wherever you are, you can always be located. But they issued the arrest warrant. It remained on paper for more than a year. Seydou Abagri was living a free man. In fact, his lawyers were going to court up and down. How do you say that a person who is hiding has lawyers he's giving instructions to who are going to court, from High Court to Court of Appeal? So government just didn't want to act. National security just didn't want to act. Then they succeed in setting aside the arrest warrant. And if you read the ruling of the Court of Appeal, the judges lament that the Attorney General did not even put in a response.
That's right.
Then they get it rescinded. The Attorney General decides to appeal. As for whether or not the argument about the rightfulness or otherwise of the arrest warrant, I don't want us to go into that because it's not a legal exercise. But except to say that there's a difference between Section 61, which the Court of Appeal was complaining about, and Section 71, which sort of allows the High Court to be able to issue an arrest warrant. But I don't want us to go into that. I just want to give you a litany of events that show that national security and government, for that matter, is fully aware. So the Attorney General now decides to file an appeal of the arrest warrant. We talked to him. We told him that, look, you are better off just issuing another arrest warrant because an appeal is a waste of time. And the situation in Baku is quite volatile. If you allow this man to go, we may have consequences. The following day, to our utter dismay, that arrest warrant, the appeal was withdrawn. You know, and then we are where we are now. So I don't think that the national security or the security architecture is not aware of what is happening in Baku. It is because some people think that by giving the Mampusis in Baku what they want, it may brighten the chances of Dr. Bawumia. And indeed, there are some that we have heard who say that look, you let Asedo Abagri go to Baku, let there be chaos or whatever. We will place a state of emergency on the Baku area, which are 6 constituencies, so that they don't go to the elections, and that may brighten the chances of Dr. Bawumia. I don't know where they get those kind of analysis from. And they seek to say
that's a speculation you are making for now.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. No, it's a speculation that is firmly grounded in the events that I've told you. Otherwise, how do you place an injunction on a funeral? People go and do it.
It's difficult to think that any of our leaders will be interested in allowing bloodbath as a pretext to issue a state of emergency to disenfranchise a group of people. Already 19 people are dead, but we are told the numbers are even higher. And you can't think that any leader will want more people to die just so they win an election.
Shocking as it is, that is what we have found ourselves in, the situation we found ourselves in now. And as I was saying, they have managed, and when they go to their meetings, they have managed to convince the government that Kusasis are anti-MPP. So let us do this, even if we don't get them to vote, it brightens our chances. But let me say this, that in the Kusasi area, there are 6 constituencies. It is only Pusiga and Garu that have never given the MPP an MP. Indeed, the whole of Upper East, as we speak, the only MP that the NPP government has in the whole of Upper East comes from a Kusasi zone, Binduri. Before him, we had given them the current minister for Upper West region. We gave them Pemka of Timpani. We gave them Fuseni of Zebila. And so on and so forth. In 2004, we gave them Adamu Sakande in Baku. So Kusasis are not that we are having. Is said Abagre coming to Baku to become Mamprusi community chief, or is he going to be paramount chief of Baku traditional area or Kusa traditional area? I beg you, can you ask my brother that question?
But you know that is what it is.
Yeah, but
it's not about being a community chief. Otherwise, there will not be any problem.
Yeah, but my brother, there's a sitting paramount chief of Baku who has 25 divisions under him, who has been a member and former president of the Regional House of Chiefs, who is the current member of the National House of Chiefs, who is duly gazetted. Do you just get up one day and say, I have skinned another person to become paramount chief? What kind of lawlessness is that? And now they are telling us that if we are not happy, we should go to court. A man has been there for more than 40 years. You didn't find a reason to go to court.
Is there not any other way other than you wishing that the government will issue a fresh arrest warrant and comply with the processes of issuing same as the Court of Appeal has indicated, by which it annulled the first one? Is there not any other way other than issuing an arrest warrant, arresting Na Kuluga the second? Is there not any other way than that to resolve the situation now?
First, I don't know why you keep referring to him as Na, because I don't know what Na he is.
When he was in Skin, that was a Skin name he was giving.
Well, that is why they call it illegitimate. Illegitimate to the extent that, as I've just narrated to you, there's a legitimate chief in the area.
Okay, please answer my question.
Yes.
Can something else be done other than using the force of law in arresting someone who is also recognized by a populace as their chief?
Yes, something else can be done, and it is very simple. The offenses that Seydou Abagre, first, you have never presented Seydou Abagre to the police for them to charge him. There's a reason why the arrest warrant was issued. If Seydou Abagre were purporting to contest that the person who is sitting in Baku is not the chief, he knew the institutions to go to. Now, if you engage yourself in a conduct that has the potential of breaching the peace of this country, is my brother saying that doesn't amount to an offense?
Okay, thank you, Maxwell. Thank you, Maxwell. So let me go to Dauda. Yes, Dauda, so listening to Maxwell, I cannot foresee, it's difficult for me to see a compromise happening, because as far as they are concerned, this must be pursued as a criminal conduct, or in the alternative, if the Mamprusis agree that now Alhaji Saidu Abagri will only be a community chief, there will not be any problem. It's difficult for me to see this happening. How can we get out of this?
Very well, Samson. Samson, I think you have overindulged my brother on the other side. And simple question that you asked him, he's gone on and on and on and on without answering the questions.
And so you to try and answer my question directly.
Yeah, I'm not going to digress, but you know, the determining factor in all this is that who founded Baku. Okay, and the history is clear. Even the writings of Sam that, I mean, the Kusasis, you know, refer to very much. Sam says that Baku was founded by Mamprusi. You see, the Kusasis also agree that yes, they were acephalous people, okay, and that they did not practice chieftaincy. And they also agree that it was the Mamprusis who founded the Baku scheme.
But the Kusasi people had the Tindanes. The Tindanes are owners of land.
Samson,
that's the question, isn't it?
Yes. If you have time and you want me to go there, Samson, I know you are a Frafra man. Fortunately, I am also partly Frafra because my mother is Frafra. Now, that Tindana issue that we talk about, look, we have Tindanes all over the Frafra Grone area. Okay, do the Tindanes really own the land? You see, the Tindanes even belong to families. So, Samson, you are from Polko, I know. Okay.
No, I'm from Gambibgo. I'm not from Polko.
Yes,
I'm from
Gambibgo. Gambibgo and Polko are, you know,
it's all right. Go on.
Yes. So, you see, the Tindanes are custodians of Tingbane. You see, these people do not own the lands per se. They pacify the gods. Families own the land. Look, it is trite law. How do people acquire land? Either by discovery or purchase or conquest. Kusasis have never said that they discovered Baku. Where did they discover Baku from? Where were they and they came to Baku? There's no history of that.
But the history is also that you know, the Nairi and his people involved in trade, and because you were involved in a lot of trade, all he does was for the safety of his people, he will appoint someone to be around to check, and that is what has led to and developed into what is becoming sort of the chief.
Yeah, so when Atabia came down, okay, from Zozugu to Zotinga, Baku was not, it was not Baku, it was called Zotinga. Zoretinga. I'm trying to get. See, at that point, when Atabia came, the whole land was vacant. You see, we have 6 Mamprusi settlements. Samson, don't forget, we have the Bisa area, the Kulugungus, the Mognores.
But if people were not in charge of those lands, what was the fear about the attacks on the trade routes, which led to the Nairi appointing, his sons to go to these places and to ensure protection?
That whole area is called Mamprugu State. That whole area was called Mamprugu State. Okay, and there was a relationship. There is a relationship between the Nairi and then the Tinkoro Naba and the Moro Naba Emosi in Burkina Faso. Okay, now you also agree with me that the houses, the Zabarmes, the Moses, the Chokosis, the Bises, they all lived in the Baku area. But what we are talking about is the 6 cantons that were specifically for Mampusis, and I'll name them for you. We have Sinimbaga, which was the first garrison. Okay, then we also had the last one that came, that was Biduri. We had Baku itself, we had Gombo, we had Kanga, we had Teshi, we had Werekambo. These were purely Mampusi settlements. You see, and you see, we are talking about Baku, Samson. We are not talking about Kusiga. We are not talking about Zebila.
Okay, so for the lack of time, can you tell us? Can you tell us, for the lack of time, can you tell us what, in your estimation, will restore calm and peace in Baku?
Very well. Now, first of all, I disagree when they say that when Nashega came back to Baku, that is what, you know, started all these upheavals, killings, and mayhem. You see, 2009, there were killings in Baku. 2010, there were killings in Baku. 2008, there were killings in Baku. 2011, there were killings in Baku. In 1956, there were fights in Baku. Look, history tells us the first person who started this matter was Duguyeli Hebe. Duguyeli Hebe was the classmate of President Liman, my late father Imoru Salifu, Mr. Ganda, I'm trying to remember his name. They were in the boys' school in Tamale. Duguyeli Hebe came back and started
Dada, can we avoid that? Because when we go back into the history, it brings up issues, and Maxwell also will insist that he be given opportunity to speak, because the history also says that the state at a point set up a commission or a committee led by some chiefs, and the resolution in that process was in favor of the Kusasis being the Bokunaba and not the Mamprusis. So if we go into all of that, it will bring problems. So can you tell me what, in your estimation, is the way forward to resolve this?
You see, the way forward, I was on your studios, I think that was on Monday, and I proposed a way forward. I'm sure you have it. I said that because of the intermarriages and the relationships that we, the Mampusis and the Kusasis, have had in historical times, and we still do have, you see, we need to come together and fashion a win-win situation. Other than that, our grandchildren, my grandchildren would still be, you know, fighting this in the next century.
What for you sounds like a win-win situation?
Yeah, so what I said was that, look, no Mampusi is contesting to lord himself over any Kusasi anywhere. And that our customs and traditions are different. And that just like the way Maxwell says that the Kusasis want emancipation and that they were subjected to apartheid. I don't know what that is in our modern
they call it internal colonialism.
Internal colonialism, very well. You see, the Nairi does not call people and enskin them. People go to the Nairi and get enskinned. Previously, the Kusa Naba was enskinned by the Nairi. You see, as well as other Baku Nabes. But you see, this issue we are dealing with is with respect to Baku within the municipality. And for lack of time, I cannot tell you. What I am saying is that, yes.
Thank you very much. I can give you 30 seconds on the closure or shutdown of the 8 courts in this area. The High Court in Bogatanga, the Circuit Court in Bogatanga, District Court in Bogatanga, District Court in Zuarungo, District Court in Zabila, District Court in Garu, District Court in Bongo, and then District Court in Pusiga. You are a lawyer, you practice. Is this, how helpful is this?
It is not good, I have to be honest with you. Okay, it will create some form of hardships for, you know, people who want to have access to the court, especially criminal matters, okay? And I'm not privy to national security briefing to the CJ as to the reason why she has decided to shut down those courts. So I cannot say that it was a bad decision or it was a good decision.
So this is a time where there are infractions of the law. When there is an infraction of the law, what happens? People are just picked by police and kept in custody. That's it. Yes, Maxwell, let me hear you on that quickly. Please, strictly on the closure of the courts.
Oh, but my brother, you have given him...
Maxwell, I'm very sorry. Strictly on the closure of the courts and how that impacts on the security situation.
Give me a minute to say something and then I'll come to the closure of the courts. I beg you. Now, I have a very simple response to my brother who was talking about who founded Baku. When we were in school, they taught us that a certain Prince Henry founded Africa. Some say it was Leo Africanus. If we agree that the descendants of Prince Henry, who founded Africa, should come and be our kings in Ghana, then we will give up. Because that's the logic that they are pushing on us. And I have said repeatedly that this argument about who founded Baku, we can be at it ad infinitum, and nobody will get our way clear. Our case is simple and straightforward.
Right. Closure of the courts. How does that impact on the security situation and life generally?
Of course, I mean, I don't know the decision. I don't know what informed that decision. And there are some other state institutions that are working in the region. I don't know why they chose to close only the courts, as if to say that it is only court staff who their lives matter more than the police, the army, the civil servants, the teachers, the nurses. They are all there. They are working, especially in these times that there's a likelihood of the breach of law and order. If they arrest people and our laws are clear, what you should do with them, and you close down all the courts in the region, I don't know what they intend to achieve with that. And we should not be behaving as if judicial staff are more important than all the other people. And these are all pointers to what I was trying to say, that they will do these things bit by bit and come and tell us that the peace of the area is threatened. And so there would be a state of emergency.
Okay.
To sort out somebody's perceived chances of victory.
Thank you.
Will not
thank you, Maxwell. Thank you, Maxwell. And I'm going to take very brief comments from my guests who are going to be discussing the other issues with us. We have Kofi Bentil, lawyer and senior Vice President Imani Africa. We have Andrew Apia Dankwa, lawyer and leading member, Movement for Change. Ni Ama Ade, lawyer, Center for Social Justice. And Dr. Tony Edu, former Ghana ambassador to the Netherlands. We'll take just brief comments and then we'll take a break, return to the Supreme Court versus the Parliament of Ghana. Dr. Victor Doke, what will be your concluding comments on this?
Well, I think my concluding comment will be that the central government knows what exactly it has to do with regards to bringing finality.
You have taken a position. You said he should be arrested, he shouldn't have been allowed to go back there, you know, and if the arrest warrant has been set aside, there should be a way to make sure he doesn't get back there. Yeah. They insist that you can't be asking for that.
Well, we are looking at how we can bring peace to the area, how essential services can still be running, how people will not lose their lives. Okay, so if in a matter such as this, an emergency situation, Seidu is the cause of all these renewed clashes, then I think the right thing to do is invite Seidu out of Baku and then address the issues. Now, in addition to that, I think the central government needs to have a contingency and emergency plan. As it is now, I don't see one in place. That's why we keep, getting
the military is still there. They've been there for a long time.
The military is still there. The police is still there. But I reiterate that curfews are not, the means to resolve or address a conflict. It is one of the ways. It's a direct prevention measure, operation prevention measure, just to stop the clashes for some time. While the clashes have been stopped, what are stakeholders doing? The National Peace Council, needs to be resourced, okay? There needs to be a lead focal point where they lead discussion, they lead mediations. Who are those leading the mediations? It's like we throw in people here and there, and then they have no idea as to what is going on.
This is a century-old situation.
Exactly.
So the solution may not be as simple as you suggest.
It won't be, but we need to have sustained engagement. As it is now, what is being done on the ground? Yes, the fighting has halted. What are we doing? Okay? We need to have that sustained engagement. Without that, we'll still be hovering around the same problem over and over again, and we won't have any solutions to it.
What do you say about the fact that this has escalated beyond the boundaries of the environs of Baku, to the point that even the closure of the court has affected Bolga, Pusiga, and we are being told that even residents in Accra, are getting to fight?
Yes. Now, I got to know of this, tensions in Ashaiman and other areas where these two, members of these two factions live in, and it's a reality. And we need to look at those areas too. Now, closure of the courts, I think maybe the CJ should relook at it and then probably put things in place. Let's have some modalities with regards to either some operated. Now, everything is shutting down, okay, means that. So when you get criminals, in the
suspects.
Suspects, where do you keep them?
By the law, within 48 hours, they are supposed to be before a court.
We need to look at all those things. Other than that, then it means we are just doing anything anyhow in the area, which is not good.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Victor Doke is lecturer, Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. Now, Kofi,
yes, sir.
What do you say?
I say it's sad, and unfortunately, we are playing with fire. I am aware that there were times when in Abobloshi, fights erupted. And we hear that in certain places in Accra, you have formations, around these ethnic groups. God forbid. But if they start firing, you'll be surprised how terribly this can spread. We also hear that the guns that are being supplied are supplied from Accra. So there's a lot underfoot. First question is, who answers when there are these security lapses and intelligence failures? Anyway, on the specific issue, a wise man once said that when traditional institutions descend into irrelevance and are not subsumed by modern systems, they only generate confusion. When traditional institutions descend into irrelevance and are not subsumed by modern systems, they only generate confusion. We don't have time, so I won't go into it, but this is what I'm going to say. I don't see why we should not pass some sort of law that says that any area in this country where a chieftaincy dispute ensues or erupts, the government, the state, should ban all chieftaincy institutions in that place until they resolve it and come and tell the state. If I had time, I'll explain. But my point is, chiefs are revered, we respect them, and we want to keep them. They are part of our culture, but they are not necessary for the functioning of the state. So to the extent that they can cause death and cause confusion and threaten the state, we shouldn't tolerate them.
We don't ban the politicians when the politics lead to the death of 8 people in this country.
We do. When the soldiers take over, who do they ban first?
Who has been held responsible for the 8 people who were killed in the elections 2020?
If you had time, I'll tell you. But you don't have time. My point is this. Look, somebody caused something, and that led to something. I ask first, who answers when there are these security and intelligence failures? As far as I'm concerned, this is not beyond the security systems in this country. National security has all kinds of people running all over the place, terrorizing ordinary people. And you lose sight of things that are like this, and 90 people.
Now suspicions are being,
If you had time, we'll go into it. But my point is,
there's an attempt to have the place shut down under a state of emergency so that there will not be voting.
That is also another matter. You see, somebody is saying that somebody is saying that it is somebody's political machination to, shut the place down in a state of emergency, etc. Look, if a state of emergency will prevent the death of 19 people, do it. What is the purpose of the state? You can't convince me that the Ghana army is not capable of taking and holding Baku. This is somebody's plan working well. And we are called here in Accra to deal with it.
In November, when the 10 people died, were killed, they were accused for it.
I was following when...
so maybe they are also being hedgy in how they approach the situation.
And Samson, we are all driving back and forth. You don't know where you will be and a stray bullet catches you. Okay? So if we had time, these things threaten the whole state. Abobloshi is just here. Ashaman is just here. You don't know where they are. And I'm telling you, there are big men in Accra, put funds together, buy guns, and send them there. And some of the guys here are armed.
We have
so
heard
we are dealing
over
with
and again
matters.
that almost every home
charge.
in Baku has a stash of guns.
Yes.
How to retrieve them is the problem. I read a story of a gentleman who had to attend the funeral of his father. He went together, he was in a vehicle in the company of his brother and his wife and other people. He finished the funeral. On his way back, he got caught in the crossfire.
Exactly.
He was killed.
Yes.
He's gone to bury his father. He's dead. Yeah. And some other person was also, killed.
Because somebody is quarreling.
Oh, no.
This is why the state exists. This is why we have an army. Internal aggression and external aggression. Just dump, the authority on it.
Okay. Dr. Tony Edu, you are with us. What can you say briefly about this situation, how to get out of it? Because it can't continue forever.
Samson, good morning and thank you for having me. Samson, in principle, I don't really want to comment on chieftaincy issues because they are emotional, ethnocentric, and they defy rational arguments. More than that, and if I recall, Professor Claude Aki and his distinction between consummatory traditionalism and progressive traditionalism. Chieftaincy issues always border on consummatory traditionalism, which is a bane of development. A bane of development. But Baku has been with us. I recall how Yakubu's time, there were many casualties, innocent people being killed. Up till now, Baku is still with us. Samson, I grew up in Kumasi, Malaysia, bordering Zabon Zongo. And the Mamprosihine house was just close to my family house, and I was supposed to be the Mamprosihine's godson. At no point in time would the Mamprosihine have set himself up as a chief or king in Kumasi. He wasn't there. So how come the Mamprosis want to establish a Bokunaba on a land that they do not own? Then there is the historical narrative. We were here first, we have the land, and so all these irrational things. The thing is that chieftaincy diverts attention from progressive developmental issues. They are too traditionalistic, and they act as a bane of development. I agree with Kofi Bento. The negative role that the chieftaincy institution plays in our strive for development. But you can't wish them away. So the government of the day has the mandate, the responsibility, indeed the duty to ensure that an institution recognized by the Constitution does not operate in such negative terms as to thwart the development of any community. As it is now, the whole of Baku is under a lockdown. Services have been suspended. No financial services, no water supply. Is that all for what? For the pride of one man?
Some time ago, people felt they could take
ethnic group.
Some time ago, people felt they could take refuge in Boga. Now it's escalated to Boga.
Yeah, and it's coming to Accra and so on and so forth. All these constitute a bane on our development. But you can't wish them away. So the government must perform its cardinal duty of bringing peace. Nana Akufo-Addo has gone around beating his chest about bringing peace to the last dispute in the north.
Yeah.
Can you remember?
Yeah, that has to do with the Abudu and Dani situation.
Yes. So why can't they do the same for Boko?
I suppose the process has been going on, and we understand even Otunfo, who led that process, is still involved in the Baku situation somewhat.
Then it must be institutionalized so that the process can go on. I never heard of the Nairi raising Mamprosi in Kumasi as a chief. He was Mamprosi, chief of the Mamprosi community in Kumasi, period.
Okay.
Why are we so backward? Why are we so backward?
Okay. Thank you very much. Andy, do you want to say something briefly in a minute so that we take a break and return to the Supreme Court? What's the problem with your line? Oh, no. Niadi.
Yes. Good morning to our listeners and guests. Tribute to Osiadeyo Nana Addo Dankwa III, who published The Institution of Chieftaincy in Ghana. And I think that everybody must go read that book and the enormous knowledge and experience that he espoused in that book. And I think that once we do that, it will give some pointers as to how we can effectively.
Briefly, what do you see? Briefly, what do you see to be the way out in Baku?
I mean, the way out is that they are landowners, and their respect must fully be given to the landowner. That's.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, I'm saying that they are landowners, and respect must fully be given to the landowners.
In this case, you are referring to who? The Kusasis or the Mamprusis?
We all know who the original landowner is. Okay. We all know it, and we know clearly that there has been some visitors who have come onto the land. You want to take Accra, for example, where there have been chiefs installed in various quarters, and then they try to assume ownership and to take over from the people, and it does not augur well. And I know that we know that the issues are straightforward. Let us not hide under anything. It cannot be politics as usual. It cannot be one of the politics of everything. Let's put where the issues are, and then the solutions will be found.
Okay, so we speak. Am I the one thinking we just oversimplify that this is as easily done as possible, and yet it's been running on for years? You have Supreme Court decisions, and you have even decrees. Yes. Okay, we'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile, it's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile we put Ghana first. This is brought to you by the kind sponsorship of Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN everywhere you go. HRC University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 33 years plus. My Way Insurance, dial *165# on MTN to join My Way today. DPS International, where every child shines. Flamingo Paints, simply superior. Syntex Tanks, it's strong, it's tough. Activa International Insurance, our clients, our passion. And my outfits, as always, is by Konati Clothing. You can find them at Adenta Shopping Center, Adenta Down. Call 0244 676732. Right. Got loads of your messages, but we will look at some of them just briefly before we proceed to the Supreme Court. Now, you don't identify yourself. You say this Bawku conflict started not today and they are still fighting. Instead of them making peace, they are rather in war and killing themselves. The only thing the government does is to impose a curfew, but yet the conflict keeps growing. Prince Henry in Koforidia says, until we stop pretending that we are solving the Bawku conflict, we shall not achieve anything. Why is Dr. Bawumia, the head of the police, Dr. Bawumia, the head of the police council, quiet whilst lives of ordinary citizens are being lost? Alhaji Jama says, please, with due respect, address Na Alhaji Saidu well, because he is a chief and was enskined by Nayiri the king. Okay, by Nayiri the king, kingmaker of the northern Ghana. Okay, so Kofi, the other thing I suffer when I'm moderating chieftaincy issues, including this Baku situation, it doesn't matter how I try to moderate it. When I finish, I get all sorts of attacks. When I'm coming to moderate this, I read tons of history around these issues, but I still never escape. You know,
that's what Dr. Tony said.
I was calling Na Alhaji Saidu Abagri by his skin name.
You offend
Na Kuluga the second. Somebody says you shouldn't do that because it's not. Yes. Then those who are also for him say that's what you should be doing.
Yes.
Anyway, then Muhammad Salifu says it is very possible for peace to return to Baku. All we need to do is form an eminent group to facilitate the engagement of both factions. There is, however, nothing like a rival chief or recognized chief. It's all about ego issues, political manipulation and machination. It is solvable. Yamyolia Prince Botaya Yusuf says Baku is doable. If government is really committed in ending this chieftaincy conflict, National House of Chiefs, Supreme Court or Judicial Committee of the National House of Chiefs, Commission of Inquiry or Commission of Eminent Chiefs. These have all happened over the years, yeah. You know, including specific laws just being passed for these situations. Nuruddin said, no time. Maxwell, be informed that some sons of Mampurugu, Dr. Bawumia, was there when an arrest warrant was placed on the Nayiri and Bokuna Shirega. Did we blame Bawumia for that? Fatawu Zanya Bugri says, how can the return of Na Kuluga be the cause of the recent disturbances? There were disturbances in Baku even before Na Kuluga was enskinned. Okay, we know that, but right after the enskinment, there was trouble. The very few days after he returns, 20 people or more are killed. Well, Yao Febiri says the leaders of the various factions are only interested in their interests, not the welfare of the people. Mumuni Yakubu Nambe sounds like one of the lawyers for the Mampurugu. As well, it says, why should he not enter Baku, his birth home, in the reverse? If it is based on security point of view, why don't the security apparatus ensure that intelligence takes care of the anticipated confrontations right in Baku? The 1992 Constitution guarantees freedom of movement of all persons. Do chiefs have the power under the Constitution to place embargo on political campaigns? So the Baku Naba, that's another thing. You heard one of them mention it. There is sort of an embargo by the Baku Naba, as in not the Na Kuluga, the second, against campaign activities by the NPP.
Which is illegal.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much for those messages. Let's move on now. And now we're going to the Supreme Court. And you know what happened in the Supreme Court on the 31st of October. The Speaker instructed his lawyers, led by Thaddeus Sorry, to go back to that court and seek to set aside or vacate the ruling of the court and its orders that said that the speaker's ruling, or is it announcement, that 4 seats were vacant should be suspended until the determination of the suit brought to the court by Afenyo Makin. The Supreme Court turned down the arguments flatly and said they had power to do everything they did. Nothing was done that was wrong. Therefore, their orders still stand. The 4 MPs must continue to do their work until the case has been concluded. Let's hear from the court briefly.
An order of stay of execution must be made on consideration of exceptional circumstances that can affect the parties, which exceptional circumstances include the wreaking of irreparable harm if an order of stay of execution is not granted. In the ruling of the Supreme Court on 18th October 2024, the Supreme Court was very clear that its orders were being made because of the exceptional circumstances that would flow from the effect of the ruling of the Speaker of Parliament declaring the 4 seats vacant and a determination not to allow the MPs to remain in Parliament. What are some of the effects that weighed on our minds as exceptional circumstances that were alluded to in the ruling? The 4 constituencies of Amenfi Central, Fomena, Aguna West, and Suhum in the Western region, Ashanti region, Central region, and Eastern regions of Parliament are made up of hundreds of thousands of Ghanaians who had queued to elect these members of Parliament to represent their interests in Parliament as their voices. By declaring that their duly elected representatives in Parliament had vacated their seats for acts that were interpreted within the light of Article 97(1)(g) by the Speaker, the Speaker was actually enforcing this interpretation of Article 97(1)(g) against those hundreds of thousands of Ghanaians, and not just the 4 people that sit in Parliament. He was also doing so at a time that from the official records of Parliament presented to the Supreme Court, the Speaker knew that a contrary interpretation was being placed on the same constitutional provision and that the Supreme Court's jurisdiction had been invoked to provide the correct interpretation. By reason of law, there could be no by-election to replace these elected representatives between 17th October 2024 and 7th January 2025. So, 7th January 2025. 2025. So these Ghanaians would have been left without a voice and representation in Parliament from 18th October 2024 until 7th January 2025, when the 9th Parliament can be duly constituted in Ghana. This exceptional circumstance arising from the outcome of the ruling weighed on the mind of the Supreme Court to grant an order directing a stay of execution of the ruling of the Speaker on 17th October 2024. Second, the effect of this ruling would be that the salaries, allowances, and other emoluments of these members of Parliament would have had to stop being paid immediately. They would have had to vacate their offices in Parliament and cease functioning on any committee of Parliament that they were serving on. If any of them was a minister or deputy minister and had been appointed as such by reason of being members of Parliament, the ruling that they had vacated their seats could have brought those duties to an immediate halt. Indeed, one of the 4 members of Parliament is the current second Deputy Speaker of Parliament. The Supreme Court was very clear that these outcomes that could cause irreparable harm to the constituencies in issue and the MPs themselves constituted exceptional circumstances to warrant a halt of the ruling of the Speaker until the controversy raised had been resolved.
Right, so that's Her Ladyship, the Chief Justice, Gertrude Araba Isaba Saki Tokono, leading the panel of 5 to deliver their decision as far as the attempt by the Speaker's lawyers to have the decision of the court vacated or set aside. They said, among others, that the claim that they do not have jurisdiction to entertain the current process is misinformation, in their words. They also say that some of the arguments border on an act of disinformation as far as their jurisdiction matters are concerned. Some say that the ruling was not executable. They say you're wrong, it's executable. It was argued that ex parte applications in the ordinary course, we know them to be granted only for 10 days. They said we have power under Article 2 to do beyond that, and we did exactly that. They gave reasons why they gave, even though the people asked for 10 days, they gave an order to last until the case was over. They said if all the parties had complied with their orders to file their statements, the matter would have been dispensed of quickly. Now, we're looking to maybe the 11th of November if the matter will be disposed of. Right after their decision, we had Alan Shermanting issue a statement right after the decision. Among others, Alan Shermanting agrees with Gbagwin in what he did, but says that he should proceed to have Parliament sit and not do anything that will hurt the state further. They said, in light of all the above, they had made some arguments. The Speaker of Parliament is right to declare the 4 seats vacant and issue a consequential order for the minority caucus in Parliament to be considered as majority caucus in Parliament. However, they are thinking that for the general good, they said, with barely 4 weeks to the general elections, it is absolutely critical that all parties, the judiciary, the legislature, the executive, and the citizenry of Ghana work towards a resolution of the delicate matter to ensure a peaceful path towards 2024 general elections in December. Here in the studio is Andrew Appiah-Dankwa, lawyer and leading member of the Movement for Change. What necessitated the statement that you issued? So we speak to Andrew. We go to Dr. Tony Edu. We have Ni Ama Ade also joining us, and then Kofi Bentel as well. Yes.
Yeah, so let me take this opportunity to wish lovely viewers a good morning. Wish yourself a good morning, and my senior brother here a good morning. I think it's beyond contestation.
I have been enchanted, though, the way you get in your yellow, and I saw your campaign in Kumasi. And long stretch, crowd. Will that translate into votes?
Certainly.
You sure?
I'm telling you.
Okay.
In fact, as we speak, there's a walk, as in what happened in Kumasi is being replicated in Accra, and that's why I'm in my full regalia, my beautiful yellow butterfly.
Let's see how it goes. Now let's hear you.
Yeah, so I think it's beyond contestation that we find ourselves in a very needless constitutional crisis.
Needless?
Yeah, very, very needless. Well, that's my personal opinion. Because, you see, for this system of governance we chose upon ourselves, whose focus is to limit powers of government so that the purpose for which we took upon this system, being to protect our lives, our liberties, and our right to pursue our own happiness, can't be guaranteed. It requires a certain level of integrity. And I think what this needless constitutional crisis, in my opinion, is bringing to the fore is the fundamental lack of integrity by people we've granted powers to. Now, why am I saying that? I think the terms of Article 97 1G, which is the reason why we are facing this crisis in the first place is pretty clear. My personal view is that the framers of the Constitution intended that where you, the MP yourself, you have, as in, done anything under the 97, you yourself should vacate your seat.
Principle of automaticity.
Yeah.
Okay.
In my view, that's unfortunately, the MPs concerned failed to show that integrity and stayed in Parliament, even though, in my view, it's clear that they've breached the terms of Article 97 1G. Also, I think it is also quite clear that where 97, anything under Article 97 happens, is the duty of the Speaker to inform Parliament of the vacancy. I think that's also pretty much clear.
Pursuant to their standing orders.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, having said that, I think where there's any issue that borders on the interpretation of the Constitution, it's also pretty much clear that the Supreme Court has the authority. We need to understand that our system of governance is premised on the belief that the Constitution is supreme. It's the Constitution that creates powers, Constitution that distributes those powers. And in that light, even the Supreme Court themselves are under the powers of the Constitution, as in to say they do not have unfettered powers.
But we must agree that there's a level of supremacy in our representation in Parliament, even though there's supremacy of the Constitution.
Yes.
Since all of us are represented in Parliament, if you are looking at the hierarchy, Parliament will hold supremacy in the philosophical sense of it.
Yes,
okay.
But the Constitution is
supreme. Yeah, no contest.
You understand? And we also understand that to achieve the purpose of the Constitution, which is to protect our lives, our liberties, and our right to pursue our own happiness, we, the people of Ghana, recognize that to do that, then we needed to separate the powers of government. You understand? And create institutions who are meant to be equal, so that our rights will be guaranteed. Also, we need to understand that the circumstances under which one arm of government can interfere with the other arm of government is clear. So, in this case, under what circumstances can the Supreme Court interfere with how Parliament acts? I think that position is also clear. That where Parliament acts in a manner or uses their powers in a manner which contradicts with the Constitution, or acts outside the scope of the powers the Constitution has granted them, then the Supreme Court and Article 2 can interfere. For me, the issue is whether or not the condition precedent under Article 2, and under which will necessitate the Supreme Court interfering with how parliaments act, has happened. I know they made reference to Article 2. Personally, I disagreed with their interpretation of Article 2. Because if we read Article 2 clearly, there's only circumstance under which the Supreme Court can have the authority to interfere with how parliaments act, and in this case, to stay execution of Parliament, is where they've made a declaration that how Parliament used those powers is unconstitutional. You understand? Clearly, that hasn't happened. The Supreme Court has not made...
Somebody has gone to the Supreme Court.
Yes.
The majority leader has gone to the Supreme Court, and anytime I say majority or minority, it's difficult for me since day one of this parliament, because I don't really think there's majority or minority.
I agree with you.
But the notional sense,
according to what the Supreme Court says,
in the notional sense, there is majority and minority.
The law is the law.
Now, somebody has gone there to complain that there's a meaning being put on 97(1)G.
Yeah.
He disagrees.
Yeah.
Supreme Court says, we are the ones who have the power to interpret the Constitution. You just said so.
Yeah.
To that extent, our jurisdiction has been what? Invoked.
Yeah, exactly.
So if something is going on, we can make provisional orders. And the provisional order is that the thing you have done, hold on until we finish.
So you are putting an interpretation to Article 2. Does the term of the Article 2 mean that they have the powers to make provisional orders? Because, in fact, what I was hoping, and the Supreme Court is saying, where we disagree, then it calls for interpretation. You think they have? I think otherwise. So, in my view, probably the Supreme Court on Wednesday should have interpreted the Article 2, because they need to meet the condition clearly, which would then give them the powers to make the...
For the benefit of our viewers, listeners, Article 2.1, and they took time, read it over and again. Article 2.1, a person who alleges that an enactment or anything contained in or done under the authority of that or any other enactment or any act or omission of any person is inconsistent with or is in contravention of a provision of this Constitution may bring an action in the Supreme Court for a declaration to that effect.
Yes, exactly.
Fayemakin went to them and said that Bagwing is doing something. That thing, he's putting a meaning on Article 97.1, which I disagree with. So it's inconsistent with...
Exactly, but the Supreme Court hasn't made a declaration on that. The Supreme Court has not determined whether or not, please, the Supreme Court has not made a declaration as to the meaning of Article 97. Because when you read Article 2.2, the purpose of the orders is to give effect to their declaration. Let's read 2.2. It says that the Supreme Court shall, for the purposes of a declaration under Clause 1 of this article, make such orders and give such declarations as it may consider appropriate for giving effect or enabling effect to be given to the declaration so made.
They quoted this to support what they did.
And my view is that the terms of Article 2 dictates that before they make any such orders that will interfere with other arms of government. Because you see, because of the purpose of the Constitution, interfering in other arms of government is something that should not be, as in should be done carefully. And that's why, I think that's why the friends of the Constitution had put in place this article. So that before the Supreme Court can interfere in how Parliament does its business, then it must make a clear declaration as to the set contravention. But when they have not determined that Parliament is acting in a manner outside the scope of their powers, or is acting in a manner that contradicts their powers, then what would be the reasoning or the purpose for interfering with Parliament?
As a matter of law and practice, jurisprudence, is it not right that the courts have inherent jurisdiction in the first place, and they have power to make provisional orders? So they are yet to determine this, but before we determine it, we are saying, hold on. We are not saying you have done wrong. We are not saying Parliament has done wrong yet. You are saying they should have gotten to the conclusion before they can make any orders.
So Samson, and that's where the other question comes, because you see, we are under the rule of law, where the law is supposed to be certain. One argument that has been advanced is we all know the circumstances under which you can stay execution, per practice, per procedure. We know. You understand? The Supreme Court and how they state this, have stayed execution, have gone contrary to everything we know. Was per what you are saying, we know the one under which the Supreme Court or the court stay execution.
The point of law, it will help.
No, after when I'm done.
No, wait. Make your notes. Make your notes. Yeah.
You understand? And the arguments that have been advanced by so many lawyers concerning how the Supreme Court has gone about this day, contrary to what we all know. You understand? And that's why I'm of the view that, you see, they themselves were talking about special circumstances. We are talking about a situation where the Supreme Court is attempting to interfere with how another arm of government is doing its business. And I'm saying that per the Constitution, before you can do that, then you must have made a determination that in how they are using those powers, they are contravening the law. They are using those powers in a manner that contradicts the law. Then you can conveniently make those orders. But you have not done that.
The law is in the bosom of the judge.
But that I'm saying that per the concept that says that the Constitution is supreme, their powers are unfettered.
Nothing more pretentious than what the courts will do.
But because you see, we are saying no to dictatorship by the executive. We are saying no to dictatorship by Parliament. We should also say no to dictatorship by the Supreme Court, because
of course there should be judicial accountability.
Exactly, because then at the end the whole concept of constitutional democracy, whose focus is to limit powers of government, and the powers the courts are using are powers of government. You understand? For the purpose of safeguarding our lives, our liberties, and our right to pursue our happy. If we say that because the law is in the bosom of the courts, then they can on that premise, interpret or use the law anyhow, then is it not against the purpose of the constitutional democracy we took upon ourselves?
Not exactly that they use it anyhow. I was just going to, bring your attention to the fact that Article 125 says justice emanates from the people and shall be administered in the name of the Republic by the judiciary, which shall be independent and subject only to this Constitution. So when they sit there, they are sitting there because all 35 million Ghanaians cannot sit in the Supreme Court. Right.
And let me add that, you see, justice emanates from the
people.
Exactly. And justice is by what? The law. You understand? Justice ought to be
interpreted by
but justice ought to be by the law. You understand? So immediately we think that because we say the law is the bosom of the, so they can propound any law, any theory, which contradicts the Constitution itself.
The preliminary prayer for the recusal of Justice Ernest Chiy.
Yeah.
Do you agree with it that because he has been a parliamentary candidate on the ticket of the NPP, he shouldn't sit on a matter like this?
I agree on all force with that. Because in the Salah case, if you remember, in the Salah as Attorney General, a similar issue arose where they say that because the premise for this are going to be on that it breaches the principle of natural justice. That where you are being a judge in your own cause, and the key question is there a real chance of bias?
Real likelihood
of bias. That's the test. Now we all know that underneath what is going on is a battle between the MPP and the NDC.
The court doesn't see this as that; it sees it as an interpretive issue.
No, it is an interpretive issue, but also because there's a burden, but because of the burden on the judges, not just to give justice, but to manifestly be seen to be giving justice. You understand? And because, and then like you rightly said, justice emanates from the people. You understand? So that if in how you are going to give that justice, which it really is emanating from the people, there is a chance that that justice will lack legitimacy, because in the eyes of the people, because of his having been in the MPP, actually having attempted to stand as MP for the MPP.
Don't you think that would be a bad precedent? And if that happened, are you suggesting that anyone who was ever associated with a political party openly should, if they get onto the court and there is any matter involving the political party, they should stay away?
We have about how many judges? 15 Supreme Court justices, not so. Now, if by just one appointment, it can undermine the legitimacy and integrity of the judgment of the Supreme Court, what do they lose if he recuses himself, or the CJ, who has the power to appoint? Taking into consideration the perception in the system now that Nana Akufo-Addo has deliberately populated the Supreme Court with his people.
Deliberately?
Yeah, that's the perception. I'm not saying that's the perception out there. Don't you think you'll be doing the country a better service if just this one case, this judge will... In fact, I'm disappointed that he himself didn't recuse himself. Yeah, you understand? Because if your focus is to give justice, and we understand when we were in law school, it was something that you kept on saying, that justice must not only be done, it must manifestly be seen to be done. And we know that that perception will not enable that burden of justice being manifestly being seen to be done. It can't meet that burden.
Even the situations of conflict of interest, the law and practice globally is that you must declare. When you make a disclosure, then you have, as it were, disinfected yourself. We already know that this is where he was. So where is the conflict again?
No, I'm talking about...
It's not as if it's secret.
In fact, because it is open, that's one of the reasons why he should recuse himself. Because we are talking about a highly political situation, you understand? And you want what's called a decision which will have legitimacy. And we know legitimacy is about the acceptance of sin. We have 15 justices. Don't you think you'll be doing the country, you understand, a better service if in this matter, which we all know that the undertones has to do with MPP and NDC, this man who is perceived to be with MPP recuse himself?
We'll come to how we proceed from here. The Speaker has issued the summons for Parliament to reconvene. Dr. Toniedu, let's hear from you. We have heard from Kweku Ansah-Sarri, the likes of Kweku Ansah-Sarri, some of their pronouncements. Some lawyers say it's very unfortunate to suggest that, you know, the Supreme Court is just doing the bidding of the NPP. He actually uses the expression that the court has become a sort of a wing of the NPP. Chachuchi Kata, the venerable Chachuchi Kata, says that the problem of Ghana, the economy, is not even comparable to the problem we have with the Supreme Court. Some say we should be careful not to destroy the only institution that is left to keep our, you know, polity. What do you say? Yes, Dr. Toniedu, I understand we have a little, we have some difficulty with his line, so we'll get to hear his comments. Reading from Dr. Atta Kennedy, a number of the people, the comments. Is that the way to approach, even if we have to criticize? You know, the court says that criticism of the court, however rambunctious, is allowed, but it ought to be measured and tempered. Let me hear from Niyama Ade.
Yes, it's very unfortunate. It's very unfortunate. And as one of your slogans plays, we have to see to this country. I mean, like I say elsewhere, we all have a country, and the fair administration of this country is what leads us all to that prosperous future that we look at. But where you have a situation where a section of the people feels that justice is not being delivered fairly, then it becomes a problem. And that is the philosophy of what? Perception. I heard you clearly when you talk about the composition of the justices who heard the matter. That is in Article 1282, that yes, they can be 5. But who are those persons? You see, who are those persons? So that if there is that perception that that person's view or that person's inclusion is likely to dilute the judgment of the court, then something should have been done about it. And it is not a situation that our Supreme Court lacks judges, but we have 15 of them. So if 5 ought to be constituted, and there is the perception that the inclusion of some members of these 5 can raise eyebrow or give the perception that fairness is not delivered, then there is a problem. And I think that is what we are facing now. And that is what many have said, including Ansah-Sarri, including the Venerable Chachuchi Kata, including many others who have said. So that if the Supreme Court was minded, and they have gone probably, sorry to say, into their intuition, they would have known that the inclusion of this person would have thrown certain, or would have discredited, if you like, the Supreme Court in its judgment. And it is very unfortunate that they did not see it. Okay? But even then, if you go to Article 22, as we said earlier, that a person who alleges that an enactment or anything contained in or done under the authority of that or any other enactment, or B, any act of omission of a person inconsistent with or in contravention of a provision of this Constitution may bring an action in the Supreme Court for a declaration to that effect. So it means that any person, okay, so where you have a political matter, what my question here is, what would have been the outcome if it wasn't lawyer Apenyomaki who went to the Supreme Court, but any other person? And in such a political disparity, in such a political divide, as we see, why should it be him and not anybody else? And if it was anybody else, as the Constitution states, what would have been the outcome? Okay, I'm saying this because we are looking at the engineering of our judiciary system, how they work in tandem, or how they work consistently with every step that is being taken, so that this perception that is gone out there would have been avoided. So for me, I will clearly say that yes, as very good as our judiciary is, when it comes to political matters, it is very unfortunate. And it has been so with this administration. I mean, to put it bluntly, it has been so with this administration.
Let's hear Dr. Tony Edu. Hello, Dr. Tony Edu.
Okay.
Samson.
Yes.
Samson, I will not pretend to be a legal practitioner. My knowledge of the law is essentially jurisprudential. And I know that in every society, laws are made not in the belief that everybody will obey the law, but in the hope that very few people will breach the law so that we can manage the legal behavior of people. Secondly, laws are made and principles are applied in a manner that should be predictable from circumstance to circumstance, so that potential litigants will know when their behavior will infringe the law and the consequences. The Supreme Court has, over the past years, especially under the Akufo-Addo administration, behaved in a manner as if it is a supranational, supra-constitutional body that can interfere in every act of parliament. Passenger Markin's writ did not show any legal cause for interpretation. All it showed was the consequences of the act of 12 members of parliament, that they will be deprived of their membership and so on and so on. Those are not legal matters. They are the consequences of their actions under a constitutional provision that is as clear, does not require interpretation. The Supreme Court, can it tell us how come a purely political issue get the garb of constitutional issue for interpretation? Interpretation against who? The Speaker applied the law as it is stated in Article 97(1)GH. Automatic application. The consequences you face is the result of the constitutional provision, not the Speaker's ruling. So why is the Supreme Court acting as a fifth columnist for the MPP party? Every matter that the MPP loses in Parliament, it quickly goes to the Supreme Court because it knows that it's a packed court where decisions will be in its favor. This is not the route to the proper democratic governance of our country.
Is that a fair comment?
Yes, it is a fair comment. Because the facts are clear. Is it a fact that these 4 MPs have breached Article 97(1)GH? Yes.
The court is yet to decide that.
That is not an interpretive matter. You only interpret where there is a dispute, where there's ambiguity. The Constitution itself makes it clear. So what are you going to interpret? Are you going to interpret when the effects of that provision should take effect? Or are you going to interpret on the basis that their interests are hurt? They should have known that their interests will be hurt. It's a question of their right to be presented. Go to the High Court.
Hello, Dr. Edu?
Samson.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. But don't you find, for example, the preliminary objection, the manner in which they dismissed it, that it is useful? Otherwise, perhaps there will be a time that everybody will be painted with the brush of MPP or NDC and nobody can do any work at the Supreme Court?
You are talking about the
request
empaneling of
exactly.
Justice Gau.
Yes.
Well, the empaneling of Justice Gau, to me, does not have a stand in equity. Because if he has a vested interest, he should have recused himself. But the NDC caucus in Parliament also bear complicity, because you knew the political colors of these people and you approved them in Parliament, including the Chief Justice herself. You raise questions and then you go to the floor and then approve them. So you are also a court against you.
But yes, you began with a caveat that you are no lawyer, but of course, you are deeply philosophical and you, as you said, you appreciate jurisprudential matters. On the substance of the decision of the court, where they say, their powers are being challenged as to how to issue an interim order. The law says it's for 10 days, but we ignore the fact that they can come under Article 2 and do beyond that. And they actually give a good reason and say, after we issued that order, we asked the parties to file their statements within 7 days. The expectation was that if they had complied, we would be getting towards resolving the matter quickly. So 10 days would have been of no moment.
First,
they say these
in
MPs,
a political dispute.
They say these MPs should not be, their constituents should not be denied representation for the next 2 months that Parliament has. Don't you find some good reason and logic in how they come to this?
Samson, where is the reasoning when the Supreme Court is behaving like a topsy-turvy? What happened to the constituents in Aspen North regarding Jachikwesin's case, wherein they are also deprived of representation? What about South, the constituents, the thousands of people in the South who have been denied representation for 4 years? The Supreme Court is not predictable in its application of the law. And I said that does not help our democratic process. Today you stand here, you contradict yourself. Tomorrow you stand there, contradict yourself. Did we set up a supra-constitutional body to terrorize us or to guide our constitutional behavior? It's flip-flopping all the time. The Supreme Court is flip-flopping.
So let's move to Parliament. The Speaker, can you predict his next move? Because there's suggestion that yes, he may have summoned a recall. The MPP cannot marshal half of the members of Parliament to be able to take a decision if they don't have the NDC joining them. So either party cannot do this. So we are likely to see a situation where people appear for the recall and he does what he has done previously.
In which case, what is the use of the Supreme Court's ruling? You call Parliament. It's not only the Speaker involved, the NDC too is involved. they will also make sure that you don't get the quorum for decision taking a stalemate. What Afenia Markin and the Supreme Court should know is that political matters can be negotiated, not legislated, not subject to constitutional interpretation, where there is no grounds for constitutional interpretation. Afenia Markin can still get government business going if he comes down from his high horse. So you sit in the minority side, so what? You negotiate for government business to continue. But now you create a situation, an antagonistic situation, where the NDC2 says that we will deny you the quorum to take decisions. Then where does it stand? Where does the whole matter stand?
What ought to be done in the name of peace and progress as we go into the elections and want to see that things are peacefully done? What ought to be done?
The MPP caucus must come down from their high horse and negotiate with the NDC caucus.
Okay.
Take the Supreme Court out of it. It is interfering. It is interfering negatively.
Okay. Kofi, there are those who say, like he began, you know, that even the matter of the interpretive jurisdiction of the Supreme Court is an issue that ought to be determined by the court. So the court cannot make the determination without hearing the matter. And the court has done so upfront.
It's his view, and I disagree. It depends on how the matter comes. And if you read Article 2.2, there's a future tense there. It says, as it may consider appropriate for giving effect, that is immediate, or enabling effect to be given, that is future tense.
To what?
To the declaration so made.
Which declaration?
So I'm coming.
He's telling you the declaration comes after you have finished the case.
I hear you. I'm developing my point. No, wait. Listen to the Supreme Court's own reasoning.
Right.
They are faced with an ex parte.
And please, I don't say I share his view.
Of course, I understand.
Because when I play the devil's advocate, 2 minutes and people confuse it with an opinion.
You see, this thing.
I'm ready to take opinions, alternatives. Thank you.
I wish we didn't have to debate it outside.
Right.
Because really, when sometimes people behave as if there's an answer and they know it.
Yeah.
I think it's not really the best.
The problems of
Things
confirmation bias.
Yeah, you know, simple things, it's important. Simple things like the fact that all men were born equal. A war was fought over it in the US. Okay? And before they got a Magna Carta, to get kings to appreciate that all men were equal, they had to fight a war. So now we take it for granted that these things...
Back to Article 2.
So back to the point. Here's the thing. You are the Supreme Court. There are a number of things that we all should agree on, and we'll proceed from there, because those ones are not controversial. Number one is that the Constitution is supreme above everybody and every institution. We agree.
Correct.
2, the Supreme Court is the only body that may interpret the Constitution. We agree.
We agree.
Correct. So whenever there is an issue that has to do with the interpretation of the Constitution, the Supreme Court takes precedence. Now, they are then faced with a situation where somebody comes ex parte, which means they come alone without the other party.
They come on the blind side of the other party.
However, I'm speaking to the general public.
Yeah.
Alone without the other party. So the other party cannot make their case before the Supreme Court. We all know that when that happens, what the Supreme Court or any court does is they listen to you and they will judge whether the situation is so exigent that they must make some sort of interim order.
Interim.
And the rule says the order should be up to 10 days. Note, I'm speaking as to what the Supreme Court was facing. Now, then make an order and say, we are giving you 7 days to come back. And the other people should also come back and file their papers so we will hear their side. It's within 10 days. Now, the Constitution gives them power that in terms of making those orders regarding these matters, they should be able to make all orders that help them to make a declaration and, follow through to make sure that the proper thing is done. Which is why they were telling you that they have the right not to say 10 days, but then they have given you 7 days, and if you obey it, you will come and they will deal with it within 10 days. Look at the other side. What if they chose not to come? Okay, then you realize that
not to come.
If Parliament chooses not to come, okay, or disrespects the Supreme Court, then you realize that it doesn't even matter whether you give them 10 days or not, it won't happen. You must know that they are not called Supreme Court for nothing. And they don't only rule on strict law. There are policy issues and all kinds of things. One of the things we must also appreciate is this. If you disagree with a court, especially the Supreme Court, whoever you are, you must respect their ruling, give effect to it, and then go back to them.
Has anybody disrespected their ruling?
I am making a general point, which you agree with, right?
No, it's part of the thing out there in the
I made the point first. Can we agree?
Has Parliament disrespected it?
I'm not answering your question. I'm saying, can we agree that even if you disagree with a court, you must give effect to their ruling and go back to them?
I've repeated that many times here.
Thank you very much.
Ex parte affoda.
So if you're asking me whether
even if the decision is wrong,
yes,
even if it's unlawful, if it's unconstitutional,
yes,
you must obey until you have set it aside.
Thank you. So the proper thing should be that Parliament should have given effect to that ruling and then gone back.
Has Parliament failed to give effect to the ruling?
Has Parliament given effect to the ruling?
You answer my question.
No.
Has Parliament failed to give effect to the ruling?
Has Parliament given effect to the ruling? No. You are asking whether that...
What does it mean to give effect to the ruling?
To positively act to implement it.
How?
You make a declaration that some people have vacated their seats and therefore do not belong in Parliament more or less anymore.
The declaration has been suspended.
So you make a declaration to reverse it.
Really?
And no, wait. Like I'm saying, we are speaking to the general public. Today, as we speak, we know a declaration has been made by the Speaker, and he is the Speaker. Once he makes a declaration in Parliament, it is law. So, to the extent that the Supreme Court has said, per the Constitution, I want to hear you. So, in the meantime, suspend this thing because it has grievous, significance. You should reverse that thing.
Really?
Hold on. Just hear me. You should revert to the status quo.
How does the status quo revert? They say the decision is suspended. It means the 4 MPs are entitled to go to Parliament.
I hear you.
It means the 4 MPs are entitled to sit in the House and vote.
Correct.
It means the Speaker or no other person in Parliament must try to prevent them from entering or doing their work.
Correct.
Have they done any of these things?
So here's my answer to it. You are saying, therefore, that when the Speaker has made a declaration to the hearing of the whole country.
And it has been suspended.
Can I finish? And the Supreme Court has suspended it. It should be taken by everybody, including the Speaker, that the declaration that he made is withdrawn. And therefore, the status quo ante is back. That is what you are saying.
It's not withdrawn, it's suspended.
It's suspended. And so the status quo ante is back. They are all parliamentarians.
That is so.
I am simply saying that, you see, what you are saying is what will lead to confrontation, because somebody will sit in Parliament and say, having heard the Speaker say that it is no longer the
That is the person who would have breached the court's orders, correct?
Yes, but hold on. Samson, listen. So I'm saying, in respect, okay, or with respect to all these principles that the Supreme Court interprets the Constitution and says this and this, the Speaker should say, having heard them, please, the status quo is back. Then we are clear. Then nobody goes to do anything funny. Then, when the Speaker, is the Speaker of Parliament, sends his application into Parliament, even the tone of the application, the nature of the words, how they are put, will give an indication whether you are respecting or you accept the ruling or not. And you and I, we've made appeals and reviews. Even though you don't agree with them, you give the impression that I am respectful of your order, however, these are my views. I sincerely believe.
In appeals?
Yes. You can absolutely disagree with them and say these are my views.
And that's what you do.
But you don't give an impression that I don't respect your view, okay, and I'm not going to give effect to it. Please change it.
That's what you do when you challenge a decision of the court.
Then you are not getting what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when you are challenging the court, you are saying
when you are challenging a court's decision, you actually say that the court is wrong. Yeah. So what is wrong with them saying that before the court?
I don't respect is different from I disagree. I'm saying the tone.
If you don't disagree, how do you proceed?
You're not getting me. I'm saying we all respect and give effect to even rulings we disagree with.
The tone of the application was problematic?
you are not hearing me or you are not listening to me.
That's what you're saying. The tone of the application was problematic.
I am making some points, and the points I'm making is
that you were wrong. The law we know is that if it is ex parte, it must be for only 10 days. Then they come and say, that's not what we are doing. This is the other way we are going around it. Say you are wrong. You said we didn't give a hearing to the MPs. You also didn't give us a hearing, and you went ahead and made the order. What's wrong in that language?
I am simply saying, as we speak today, there is no express indication that Parliament has effected the ruling of the Supreme Court.
Must there be anything to show that they are effecting the respect of the Supreme Court? Why?
Why not?
When you do a
when the Supreme Court gives you an order, when you have given instructions that have an effect, okay,
in practical terms, in your practice, when something has happened and some aggrieved party goes to stay execution of what you have done, do you do something to undo anything?
Until you stay it.
No, do you do something to undo something?
There are times you have to.
You don't.
There are times you have to.
When they stay execution, you just...
Something.
It has been stayed.
There are times when you are injuncted or when there are rulings made against you, you have to take actions in pursuance of them.
Really?
Yes, there are times. My point is this. You are saying...
You are doing something. When you are injuncted to stop, you simply stop. Is that not it?
So, simply stop. There are omissions and commissions. What I'm saying is this. You are saying that they should go to Parliament and exercise their rights as parliamentarians, and until somebody stops them, then no evil has been done. And I'm saying that you don't wait for somebody to go to Parliament to try and act as a parliamentarian representing their people, for somebody to stop them. You have seen the belligerence in Parliament and how people have said that they were going to defend their majorities properly.
If you say that, I need just a little...
You have been told that some people say they will resist this thing. You want them to resist it in Parliament where we have seen fights before. What stops the Speaker from giving the signal that having received this instruction from the Supreme Court, the status quo is held as it is? Meanwhile, you hear, all kinds of things being said about how the Speaker does not accept what has been said.
How do you hear it? Why don't you want to hear the Speaker when he speaks to you
publicly? I want to hear the Speaker
when he speaks in Parliament,
communicate his acceptance and communicate the fact that he does not agree.
The Speaker, when he did the adjournment, what did he say? He said that he has become aware of, he's been served with this process, correct? That's what he said.
He refused the service.
No, he didn't. That's before. That's before his ruling. Not after his ruling. When they came back, when they reconvened, the day that the MPP refused to go to the House because the NDC were sitting at the majority side, he said that this has been brought to him. And that the NDC was the only group in Parliament. That group had the 92 threshold that you can do at business, but they didn't have half that you can take a decision. So he adjourned. He didn't adjourn because he's disrespecting Supreme Court. Is that not correct?
Okay. I'm also making the point that at the earliest opportunity, I believe what would inure to the peace and calmness within our leadership would have been for the Speaker to say, I disagree with the Supreme Court, but I have received this order from them. And therefore, that order that I gave, vacating those seats, is suspended. And I'm saying he hasn't done that.
But it's suspended. He doesn't have to say it.
No, you keep saying he doesn't have to say it. And I keep saying I think he has to say it. And my reason for saying so is that I have heard people belligerently, even some angrily, saying they will defend their newly won majority. I have heard, we have all heard, people say they are going to use their majority to repeal laws.
Yeah, they have said so.
They have said so many things that they are going to proceed to do. Not once, not twice, not three times. And you think under those circumstances, we should assume that they are going to go in and do everything properly, okay? And you want there to be a scaffold, somebody stopping somebody physically or otherwise, before they go to the same Supreme Court again for rulings. When you have a state in this situation, that's why I said there are things we agree on. One of the things we agree on is that you can choose to disagree with the Supreme Court.
Why should the Speaker announce a reversal when the case has not been heard to determine that he's wrong? Because the court has not made that determination.
Because he has been injuncted per the ex parte. ruling that was given and the ex parte ruling that was given, like you're saying, they should have ruled them. If they are ruled, then you will sit here and say, without hearing the other side, they pass. No, okay, you didn't say. Sorry, I withdraw it. I'm saying some people are saying they should have ruled on the ex parte.
Okay.
My point is, an ex parte is a one-sided motion. The Supreme Court says the other side, come and let me hear you before I rule.
Okay.
And until then, keep the status quo as it is. And I'm saying the simple thing that would have been done for everything to cool down would be for the Speaker to say, I disagree with you. But because you are the one that interpret the Constitution, and even people were saying that this is not an interpretation issue.
So as far as you are concerned, the Speaker is a problem.
As far as I'm concerned, I think the Speaker has not done what I believe would have led to greater peace.
Greater peace.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll be right back. All right, so guys, you don't look at it that way. I just do what I have to do.
I wish we were doing this off air. Then we'll get through it.
Yeah. So you know that the Habitat Fair is ongoing presently, and you are all invited to be at the Accra International Conference Center. Get a house, make it a home. And there are several other things that you can get, and the Habitat Fair is still ongoing. I've got some messages from you. Let me share quickly, and we're supposed to take a quick break, do we? This one says that, I like the way you are interrogating Kofi. We can all diplomatically correct the blunder with bringing the Supreme Court or Parliament down, but insisting on both sides to respect the Constitution, procedures and consistency needed for justice to be seen. This is why are they not questioning the act and intent of the act of the Speaker, which has gotten us where we are? Should the Speaker be left on the loose to do all and everything at his whim? Was the Speaker's action not intended to achieve a political purpose? Right, so those questions continue to be asked, and people ask, what did Michael Okoye do? How different is that? This one says the constitutional duty is rather on the MPs to vacate the seats. No one needs to vacate them. Did the CJ or anyone else have any evidence that these 4 MPs haven't already vacated their seats? Have these MPs occupied their seats since they allegedly put themselves in the prohibited situations?
You should give me 1 minute to deal with that.
This one says that what Kofi Bentil is trying to say is that the Speaker, having acknowledged receipt of the decision of the Supreme Court on the floor of Parliament on the day he adjourned, should have informed parliamentarians that by virtue of the decision of the Supreme Court decision, the 4 MPs affected are to resume their duties. Okay, thanks for that. I'll take a very final message because my production is just pushing me to end here, because that is where
you need to give me a minute
I can end. This one says, when the Supreme Court asserts that it has authority to extend the stay in an ex parte application beyond the standard 10 days, one must question the legal foundation of such authority. Likewise, when the court claims it has jurisdiction over a matter, it is necessary to identify the source of this jurisdiction. The Supreme Court jurisdiction should only be engaged upon the filing of writs concerning determination that contravene the law. At the time of Afenyo King's filing, had the Speaker issued any rulings? Okay, so that was a no, and that's what some disagree with. Unfortunately, my production tells me that our time is up and we have to end here. How abrupt, but thank you very much. It's been Newsfile.